Hi, I'm Sara.
And I'm Rena, and welcome to
Biopic, a podcast story. This is a podcast where we dissect the good, bad, ugly, and absurd of this specific genre of motion picture, the biopic. If you want to learn more about us, our scoring system, and how we choose movies, please check out our special introductory episode. Introduction, who are we and what are we doing? Before we get started, we do have an exciting announcement. Biopic, a podcast story, is speaking at Intelligent Speech Online. This year's theme is Companions and Rivals, and we will be talking about Truman Capote's friendships and doppelgangers in Capote and Infamous, the two Truman Capote writes in Cold Blood movies that came out within a year of each other in 2005 and 2006. Intelligent Speech is a veritable three-ring circus of content composed of 4 virtual rooms running simultaneous 40-minute sessions. These sessions include esteemed keynotes, fascinating and thoughtful creator presentations, or lively roundtable discussions, followed by a Q&A with the audience. These Q&As, together with space and time for separate chats, create a unique experience in which members of the community can engage directly with the creators they follow. This online conference is taking place on February 28th, 2026, and your ticket not only includes live attendance, but also access to recordings of all the sessions after the event to watch at your leisure. And tickets are now available at intelligentspeechonline.com.
Enter Biopic, that's BIOPIC, at the checkout for 10% off. And if you ask very nicely during the Q&A session, I may tell you the story about the time that I met and chatted up Harper Lee in the emergency room line at New York Presbyterian.
It's a good story. You should tune in for that. That alone. Also, maybe I'll talk about mock trial more. I don't know.
Yeah, fun times.
Yeah.
Sara, what movie are we doing this week?
This week we are doing Hitchcock, starring Michael Stuhlbarg and some other people.
This movie needs more Lew Wasserman.
It does.
The top billed people in this movie are not your sweetheart Michael Stuhlbarg as Lew Wasserman, but Anthony Hopkins and Helen Mirren as Alfred and Alma Hitchcock.
This was actually a 10-minute movie about Lew Wasserman that I watched. I don't know any of the rest of this that you're talking about. Rena, can you give us the trigger warning?
Trigger warning. This movie contains depictions of and or references to horror movies, murder, stabbing, adultery, old Hollywood, motion picture executives, behaving badly, toxic men, wigs, jealousy, fat suits, fat shaming, mortgages, caviar, pate, icy blondes, rage gardening, and non-lethal swimming pools.
And Rena, can you please give us the spoiler warning?
Spoiler warning. We are going to spoil everything, including possibly the major plot points in works of narrative art having nothing to do with this particular movie. Consider yourself warned.
Indeed. So some of the sources used in this episode include the podcasts You Must Remember This, the episode on Hitchcock.
I resent how much we wind up using Behind the Bastards, but they did a couple episodes on Hitchcock, which I used.
Excellent. I unfortunately could not find the paper I wrote in 8th grade about the Donald Spoto book, The Art of Alfred Hitchcock, but I did turn back to that book. We heavily reference the book upon which this film was based, Alfred Hitchcock and the Making of Psycho, written by Stephen Rebello. I did a lot of internetting. I cannot source all of the places, but I went to a lot of different places to get as much information as I possibly could about this.
Yes.
And Rena rewatched Psycho, and I meant to do that, and I didn't get a chance to, but I have a box set of Hitchcock, so I will do it at some point. I've seen it many times.
There are a few other books that I skimmed bits and pieces of in the week leading up to this that I will put into the show notes. I had completely forgotten. I'd forgotten about Vera Miles. I had forgotten who is Detective Arbogast.
Such a great performance by Martin Balsam.
So, Sara, can you please tell us a little bit about Alfred Hitchcock and the 2012 biopic Hitchcock?
So, as I mentioned up top, Hitchcock is a movie about Lew Wasserman, but I also want to issue a blanket caveat. up top here. Elephant in the room. Alfred Hitchcock was abusive and cruel to his actors, particularly his actors who were female, and we know that. And I will be linking in the show notes to a story in The Atlantic that covers this, as well as another story about Tippi Hedren, which I believe I saw in the Daily Mail. I'm hoping to find a better resource for y'all. I don't like the language of like product of the time because I hate that term. I think it's a cop-out. Product of the time doesn't mean that it was once okay. It just means that everyone once felt something was acceptable behavior. So let's be real. We've been recently reminded that in this great America in which we live, violence against women, however you want to dress it up, is still pretty acceptable to huge swaths of our population. So the information about Hitchcock being abusive and even allegedly sexually assaulting Tippi Hedren, this is all like increasingly clarified over the years as not adorable and quirky as it was presented at the time. And it's super heartbreaking to me as someone who is truly awed by the body of his work. And this movie absolutely doesn't go as far as it could in addressing this very problematic behavior and criminal behavior, possibly. And I'm going to say a lot of positive shit about Alfred Hitchcock, the artist, but I also want to be clear that I know that he was really shitty to women. And I want to just put that up top because I'm going to say a lot of nice things about him, but I also know that he was kind of a monster and a very real workplace abuser, which, as you know, I have a zero tolerance policy for. Just a little bit about Alfred Hitchcock. He's widely regarded as one of the most influential figures in the history of cinema. He had a career that spanned 6 decades. He directed over 50 feature films. He was known as the master of suspense. He became well known as a person because of his appearances on Alfred Hitchcock Presents, his TV series that does get mentioned in this movie, but also the towering figure in the history of filmmaking. His films garnered 46 Academy Award nominations, including 6 wins, and he never won the award for Best Director. What I have always loved about him, and I tried to boil this down because there's so much, and I love that this movie showed that the collaborative process that he had with Alma Hitchcock. Just his visual sensibility, the innovations that he took on behind the camera and the way he shot things, the way he elevated meh source materials, which Psycho, for example, is trash, and turn those things into exquisite, innovative, and consequential art is always just dazzled me to no end. And he really pioneered this idea of making your viewer a voyeur, showing perspective through the lens, using disorienting techniques like the dolly zoom. He really explored a lot of sexual deviance and innocent people getting wrapped up in shit way outside their purview. He had a background in art direction and production design, and he was a meticulous storyboarder, which I also love. And he maybe hated a bunch of women. His movie Vertigo, for example, has consistently been considered one of the best movies ever made, which in some ways, yes, in other ways, no. In 2012, Vertigo replaced Citizen Kane, which is, of course, another psychological profile of a man obsessed, as the British Film Institute's best movie ever. I don't agree, but I also don't want to hurt any men's feelings because men murder women when their fees get hurt. Another thing that's really remarkable about him, he was critical to the creation of the film industry and the creation of film as an art because he was there for every step of the way, which is extraordinary. He did have some creative ebbs and flows in his career that we'll talk about.
I did write a paper in college, oh my god, I can't believe I'm bringing this up as a source, about the transition from silent to sound film, and one of the films I wrote about in that was the 1929 version of Blackmail, because it has that famous scene with knife, 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 where the woman keeps saying knife. That movie stars Annie Andra, also known as Mrs. Max Schmeling. She was Czechoslovakian. It's one of those Singing in the Rain stories. It was fine when they hired her, and then she did not sound like a Cockney. They had another actress standing off to the side, speaking as she was supposed to speak while she moved her lips. But the thing here is that Hitchcock was ready to go to turn it into a sound picture. he had everything laid out so sound could be put there. And just the effects that he was able to use, given how primitive it was. One of the things I remember writing about before they figured out dubbing was like that Anna Christie is basically a love story between three people and a kitchen table. And, that's the Garbo Talks movie.
Yeah. Blackmail was the first talkie to come out of Great Britain. He joined the film studio Famous Players in 1919. He was first a title card designer. And because of the way they encouraged people to do things, and he was getting in on the ground floor of a brand new art form, he got to do everything. He became a co-writer, an art director, production manager on at least 18 different movies. Blackmail was his 10th movie. Oh. But first, through a series of events, my favorite way to transition, he ended up in Munich working in the film industry there, and he was really influenced by the German approach to filmmaking, particularly Murnau. He moved to Hollywood in 1939 and worked under contract for David Selznick for 7 years. That is when he made Rebecca, Suspicion, Lifeboat, so on. Before the end of the war, he returned to Britain to make several propaganda films to support the war effort, including... and I think this is the most important one. He served as a treatment advisor on the documentary German Concentration Camps Factual Survey, which they armed Allied soldiers with handheld cameras to capture what happened at the concentration camps and make sure that people saw it as real. They also have footage in that of them walking the Germans through the camps to show them, like, to rub their nose in it.
I don't think the Germans cared.
I mean, yeah, but so that movie, that particular film was shelved for a long time for a lot of reasons. In 2014, a documentary came out called Night Will Fall. If you have the opportunity to ever see that, see it, because it tells the backstory of gathering that footage and also shows a great deal of it. And it's incredibly powerful. After that, he went into a new era, his post-war era. And he started to really dig around in like Psychosis. Spellbound has a dream sequence designed by Salvador Dali. Notorious, Rope, which has the appearance of almost no cuts between shots. North by Northwest, Psycho, The Birds, and then Marnie, which was kind of a pivot point into the downslide a little bit. So Topaz came next and Iron Curtain. Those both did poorly. Frenzy kind of brought him back. And then his last movie was Family Plot.
Yeah, so the great Karina Longworth, who is one of our dream guests for this show, eventually, please. We stand. Did one of the episodes of her latest season, The Old Man Is Still Alive, was on Hitchcock post-Psycho.
As of 2021, though, 9 of his movies have been selected for the National Film Registry preservation. He received the AFI Lifetime Achievement Award in 1979 and was knighted in December of 1979, and then he died in April of 1980. We mentioned his wife, Alma, who was his very close collaborator, and I think this movie does a good service to showing how involved she was in his work and how critical she was to his success, which I appreciate. So we're also just going to have a little shout out here of All Roads Lead to Alexander Korda.
Yay!
Yes, love him. Alexander Korda is London Film Productions briefly contracted Alfred Hitchcock in 1933, but they couldn't really agree on projects, and Hitchcock eventually just moved to Hollywood. But once again, thank you, Alexander Korda.
Sara, can you please tell me more about Lew Wasserman, who seems like a character that we've probably already mentioned at some point, and who we'll be running into again, both as a presence in the production story of our films, and possibly once again as a character.
Indeed. So Lew Wasserman, this is from Wikipedia. He was described as arguably the most powerful and influential Hollywood titan in the 4 decades after World War II. His career, not unlike Hitchcock, spanned nearly 8 decades. Well, he lived a lot longer. But started in the 1920s through the 2000s. He started as an usher at a movie theater and became the president of MCA and led its takeover of Universal. And he made some really revolutionary changes to the way business is done in Hollywood. Lew, if I may call him that, is a really classic immigrant success story. And he created a couple of things that are really just kind of industry standard now at this point. First, the practice of points, which is actors forgoing parts of their salary for back-end profits. He created and expanded the idea of packaging. So since studios reduced their output after World War II, they let more actors out of long-term contracts, and then big agencies could negotiate stronger terms for their clients. And Wasserman really led this notion of pitching a package like of a writer client, director client, actors to the studios who then only needed to finance it, which is something that we see here.
Gosh, I feel like that generation of Jews in Hollywood, if you have seen Marty Supreme, they are all Marty Mouser, and it's just about who is the best at being Marty Mouser in the given moment.
Wasserman seems like a mensch, probably a really intimidating one. He is a massive success story. So, about the movie. Now, this movie is, as I mentioned, based on Stephen Rebello's 1990 nonfiction book, Alfred Hitchcock and the Making of Psycho, which was very critically praised when it came out, recounting the making of this movie. Just a side note, Stephen Rebello is a writer I remember reading in Movie Line magazine in the 90s. He's a really solidly good entertainment journalist. As of 2005, there was an announcement that screen rights were being optioned for the book for a television movie or miniseries. Through a series of events in January 2010, Paramount purchased the screen rights to the book. Directors including Spike Lee, Todd Field, Julian Fellows, Lee Daniels, Steven Spielberg were all expressing interest in this project. Those are 4 very different movies.
Mm-hmm. I want the Spike Lee version. That would sparkle.
Oh my God. Would the whole movie be dolly zooms?
Maybe. And they'd be a lot better than the lazy dolly zooms, where it is a cliched, low-effort means of conveying badassery through standing and walking toward a camera that is moving away from you. That is what the dolly zoom has degraded to these days, and they would do better with that.
Indeed.
I hope I used my terminology properly, because as we all know, I have no business doing a movie podcast without you.
And I have no business doing a history podcast without you. But, you know, just like looking at this list too, like Spielberg and Spike Lee are both incredibly effective dolly zoom users and use it to convey way more than badassery, and definitely take a cue from the way Hitchcock uses it in order to convey fear and exhaustion.
I cannot imagine, like, just the metric liters of puke that Hitchcock would spew at how lazily people use the dolly zoom now.
Oh, yeah. So, despite all of that, the film began development in 2011 with first-time feature film director, but not his first film, Sasha Gervasi. And the project was subsequently titled Hitchcock. Stephen Rebello came in and did some rewrites on an initial screenplay written by John McLaughlin. It was chosen as the opening night film of the 2012 American Film Institute's festival, with Lincoln as the closing night attraction. Budget of this was $15 million and it made $27 million. So it did basically okay. My feeling was, as I was watching it, it feels like it should be an HBO or Netflix movie and not on the big screen. And
yeah,
you'll be pleased to know also this comes from a real deja vu place, because earlier in 2012, HBO released a film called The Girl about the making of the Birds and Tippi Hedren and Alfred Hitchcock's relationship. And it stars beloved player of doppelgangers, Toby Jones, who, as we also know, we'll be talking about when we talk about our Capote off.
That's another thing to add to the Harlow Prefontaine list.
I have fascinating bios on fucking everyone in this movie and all the characters. There's so many interesting people involved in every aspect of this movie and the story of Psycho. Like,
I felt super conscious here of how all of Hollywood connects to all of the rest of Hollywood and the history of Hollywood, because the star of Psycho, Janet Leigh, was married to Tony Curtis, who had, I figured out, would have just gotten home from production of Spartacus around the time Psycho goes into production. They are the parents of future Scream Queen and so much more, Jamie Lee Curtis.
I'm going to need you to go ahead and put a pin in Spartacus because we're coming back to that.
This will have some discussion about the 33rd Academy Awards, which took place in 1961 for movies released in 1960. It is the most Oscar-y Oscars in terms of the politics and in terms of that upending of, I have said that The Apartment is one of the rare cases of the movie that is actually winning the Academy Award, as opposed to it being an endless circle jerk of reparations for what deserved to win not winning in another time. We know the Academy loves an epic and cannot deal with horror or comedy. Had Spartacus and Exodus, the two films that would have been in the epic slot, not been written by Dalton Trumbo, fresh off the blacklist, Dalton Trumbo. One of them probably, unless they eliminated each other, one of them would have gotten it instead of The Apartment. And it's sort of an apples and oranges thing on that. But sticking a pin in all of this. Yes. And it has John Wayne, who we love to rag on too.
We don't need to litigate this right now, but Alfred Hitchcock should have won Best Director for this. You may want to know also, who is Sasha Gervasi, the director of this movie?
I have no idea. Everyone that you've mentioned sounds better, but I am glad that Spielberg made Lincoln instead of this.
Yes. So Sasha Gervasi is a child of privilege. His dad was a U.S. diplomat. He graduated Westminster School and then King's College in the UK. His first job was working for Ted Hughes, noted feckless ex-husband of Sylvia Plath. Then he went on to work for the Samuel Beckett Foundation. Then he went to film school, where he worked as a journalist to support his film work, and he went to UCLA. He wrote The Big Tease with Craig Ferguson. Then he wrote The Terminal, the Spielberg movie. He wrote and produced a movie called Henry's Crime. He made the documentary Anvil, the story of Anvil, which is about a Canadian metal band, and people love that movie. Some other trivia. While in London, Gervasi co-founded the music group Future Primitives with Gavin Rossdale playing drums, but left the year before they changed their name to Bush. In May of 2006, Jerry Halliwell gave birth to their daughter.
Wait, was that
Spice
before
Girl.
or after she was with Robbie Williams?
I think it is after.
Okay.
Wait, oh shit, I'm not sure. And then in 2010, he married Jessica de Rothschild, who's a British theater producer. She's the daughter of Evelyn Robert de Rothschild, who's a British financier. He hasn't had any formal credits since the HBO movie My Dinner with Hervé about Hervé Villechaize. But I'm going to guess he's doing fine. I couldn't find anything bad out there about him, which is great. This movie ultimately received pretty mixed reviews, but it did go over better than The Girl. In general, people felt it was a more sympathetic look at Hitchcock. And I need to read to you this review from Huffington Post. I'm obsessed with it. It goes so hard. It says, "This Hitchcock is so well made, so much fun, and so suspenseful that it would make the original Hitchcock proud. It's a serious contender for Best Picture, Lead Actor, Lead Actress, Adapted Screenplay, Makeup, Music Score, and maybe Art Direction." This sounds like a review I would have written in my high school newspaper about anything I saw.
I have my own mixed feelings about Hitchcock. The only Hitchcock film I really love is Rebecca, which is a David O. Selznick movie where Alfred Hitchcock just happened to turn up on the set to tell the actors what to do. And it's true that arrive on the set and tell the actors what to do is basically the job description for director, but that sense of being swept away into a distant world and ravished with production values that I love, love, love so much in Selznick projects is present in Rebecca in a way that I don't see in anything I've seen from the rest of Hitchcock's work. Selznick did not belittle the female gaze. He very much makes pictures for a certain kind of female gaze that is in my wheelhouse. Hitchcock doesn't care about this. When I looked at books about Hitchcock's oeuvre, the only chapter I wanted to read was the one on Rebecca.
It's always interesting to see an artist who's known for a very specific kind of set of qualities, see them apply that skill set to something that has nothing to do with the rest of their body of work. I'm going to cite my Lord and Savior Marty Scorsese here and say like when he made The Age of Innocence,
which I loved,
or Hugo, movies that you're like, wait, why are you making this? But then you see where their passion is, and also you see like the unique ways they use their bag of preferred tricks. Like, I don't recall there being any dolly zooms in Age of Innocence, but I might need to see it again. Well, and also I don't think Gimme Shelter was in that movie, but you know.
David O. Selznick practically wrote a novella bashing Hitchcock's treatment for Rebecca, because like me, David O. Selznick was super pedantic about keep it like the book, especially when we paid for rights to this book. What I realized as I read more about this, and I came to think about how, well, yes, the only Hitchcock picture I love is the one that is a David O. Selznick production that happened to have Alfred Hitchcock on the set telling the actors what to do, is that my appreciation for Rebecca is sort of like being a Richard Pryor fan who does not care at all about superhero movies and watches Superman 3, which is notoriously a Richard Pryor film that just happens to have Superman in it. I respect Hitchcock's work, it's just not in my wheelhouse, so I had a hard time caring about the making of Psycho. The genres that Hitchcock is most associated with, thriller, suspense, horror, happen to be the ones that I gravitate toward the least. I especially dislike the horror genre. I like a big, gorgeous costume drama. And the only horror director whose work I really enjoy is, guess who, Guillermo del Toro. Loved Crimson Peak, and no, I have not seen Pacific Rim, and I'm not planning to.
Oh, let's talk about the movie.
Welcome back to the show, Helen Mirren.
Welcome back to the show, Anthony Hopkins, who, as promised, I forgot about Amistad. And I was thinking, like, this is the first time we've seen Anthony Hopkins. And then I was like, no, Alexander. And then I was talking about it later and realized, oh, wait, also Amistad, a movie that I promised you I would forget we watched. This movie has so many returning champions. Well, obviously, also James Darcy, who we just saw in Oppenheimer as the teacher that Oppenheimer tries to poison.
Because he needs to get laid.
Yes, Kurtwood Smith. Danny Huston, who we literally saw last week. To what do we owe the honor of 2 weeks in a row of Danny Huston? Michael Wincott,
who is intense and unpleasant in this movie. And I have things to say about how Hollywood can't figure out what to do with Michael Wincott. Kurtwood Smith is back on the show. Whenever I see Kurtwood Smith, I immediately know, oh no, it's hashtag that guy again. And he is here to maliciously spoil everything for our protagonist.
Yes. So, yes, I have things to say about how Hollywood can't fucking let go of Ed Gein.
I hate this guy.
So we open on creepy asshole Ed Gein, and he's about to kill his brother, and Alfred Hitchcock then walks into the frame and introduces this tale. The only pass I'm gonna give it here, the presence of Ed Gein in this movie, is that it's Michael Wincott, who we need to see in everything. He
is always super intense. He seems like he would be a terrifying person to have on set.
Yeah.
And I think that he's kind of unbearable to watch. His scenes make me cringe, and I want them to be over. And I just, there's something tonal in what they're doing with him here that isn't the best use they could have made of him. Or, like, I don't want to like Ed Gein. I don't want to care about Ed Gein. Maybe his job is to be off-puttingly repulsive.
Oh, it is. It is. I don't know if now's a good time, but I'm going to do it anyway. Can I talk about how over the fetishization I am of Ed Gein?
Yes.
Because
Go
I'm
ahead.
so fucking sick of this dude. I am so sick of it. I'm sick of hearing about him. I'm sick of things being made about him. He is not interesting in the same way that all serial killers are not interesting or whatever he is. I don't even think he's really a serial killer. He's a body parts collector. He's like a grave raper. I tried to watch the Ryan Murphy series and I noped out of it like I do many Ryan Murphy series. We as a society have already done the requisite time trying to understand serial killers and men who seek to mutilate women. And no more work need be done on this unless we're actually going to find a way to pump the brakes on it and fucking stop it. Like, we don't need to understand these people anymore. We get it. Can we not have Ed Gein here? We've shown plenty of compassion to serial killers, and I'm done. Between Anthony Perkins and Alfred Hitchcock, they have created in Psycho a much more interesting and compelling character than Ed Gein could ever hope to be.
Yeah. So the summary for this scene: Ed kills his brother by hitting him on the head with a shovel because his brother called him a mama's boy. And yes, we cut to Hitch doing the fourth wall breaking intro similar to the ones on his TV show that I occasionally saw on Nick at Night the 1 week out of the year that we had cable, which was when we would go and stay in a condo at Cape May Beach.
I was obsessed with Alfred Hitchcock Presents as a child. I'm sure that's surprising.
Oh, right. Did you grow up with Nickelodeon so you could watch it on Nick at Night?
Yes. And like, I would say like, this is another situation where it's like, who was paying attention in my house? Because I saw Psycho when I was, I think, 11, which was probably a little too soon.
That's also the age that you saw Bonnie and Clyde.
Not allowed to watch MTV because George Michael and I Want Your Sex, but allowed to watch all sorts of Alfred Hitchcock films in the name of art.
I think this is because your father was Michael Stivic.
Yes, and also my father was an enthusiast, and if I got excited about something, he got excited right alongside me. So he's like, oh, you want to get into Alfred Hitchcock? Let's watch Marnie. And don't watch Marnie with your dad, people. Don't do it. Cut to July and 1959, and we're at the premiere of North by Northwest, which is a pretty great movie. We see my sweetheart walking Alfred Hitchcock and Alma into a screening of the movie and chatting with them. And Hitchcock is asked, why don't you quit while you're ahead now that you've made this masterpiece? And
yeah. So I had no idea that Lew Wasserman was so handsome. I think I might have had him confused with Irving Swifty Lazar.
Oh, no. Lew Wasserman was very handsome.
Yeah, because, again, I have no business doing a movie podcast without you. Yeah, Hitch is eating up the press attention until they bring up his age.
Yes. And Anthony Hopkins really, really gets him in the way that we have come to know Alfred Hitchcock. He's not really happy about being asked why he should just quit while he's ahead. And he also doesn't know what his next thing should be.
Oh, dear.
And we see him the next day in the bathtub because that's where we see our geniuses from the 1950s.
If you want to be a really brilliant film writer or filmmaker, the secret is to do everything in the bathtub, or in the case of Dalton Trumbo, who we also saw doing this, spend a lot of the time in the bathtub while drinking and taking pills.
Yes, that is the way.
So we see some back and forth between him and Alma, and I feel like this doesn't match the little that what little I've read about the Hitchcock's marriage, which is that it was basically sexless, that Alma came across as kind of butch, and that Alfred Hitchcock once insinuated that they had sex just once in order to create their daughter. But it seems like in this, there's more like flirtation between them than I would have, because it felt to me like they were just best pals who worked on films together and happened to have a kid. Like, it was not a sexual marriage.
Opinions vary on what the deal was there. There's a whole school of thought that he was impotent. He suffered from as his movies tell on him all the time, a pretty intense like set of psychoses around sex and women. But yeah, like he either couldn't do it or didn't want to put it politely. But it's unclear. I do get that impression that it was sexless, but that doesn't mean that they didn't flirt and know each other incredibly well. And she's also kind of mean to him she loves to body shame him.
She's always like telling him to not eat anything. We do see him binging. We see all the little tins of pate and caviar. Like me, Alfred Hitchcock loved to stuff his face with ice cream in the middle of the night.
Been there, buddy. If you look at the combination of the things that we see here and the things that we know or like have been supposed about them, we don't know. We weren't there. But like, I think that it does kind of tell a story about his art and where a lot of his art came from.
Maybe he felt a need to abuse a certain kind of woman who matched a certain kind of beauty because he felt so ugly.
I think that Hitchcock's movies, particularly in this era of The Blonde, this era of what we think of as quintessential Hitchcock, it does feel like he's working the same shit out over and over in these movies and trying to get somewhere, and also with that pushing an envelope that is a little fucked up in terms of how he treats these women in his movies. I think we see this also with Woody Allen in the fact that, like, feel how you may about his work and his character, he has kind of made the same movie 50 times and seems to be like trying to like dig deeper and deeper to like satisfy some itch. That's a job for someone else to deal with, but I'm just saying that I feel like Hitchcock was also kind of doing that, and it sort of capitulated with Marnie when he's just like, just rape her. On screen, I want to see your face while it's happening. And it's just, it's an interesting sort of like when you give someone enough artistic freedom, they're going to maybe take shit in a weird place and they're going to tell on themselves in a way that like we didn't necessarily know he was telling on himself at the time.
Grace Kelly, she seems unique among the Hitchcock blondes in being able to maintain healthy boundaries with him. How does that happen?
That's a great question. And the first answer I have to that is I don't know, but I can theorize. Just psychologically, I think that he kind of like his cruelty increased after she left him. And I think that each of the women that came after her were kind of being punished because Grace didn't do what he wanted. I don't have enough of a grasp of how he actually treated these women versus just what has been reported. But I also I don't necessarily think he wanted to consummate relationships with them. I think he wanted to put them in a box and stare at them.
Yeah, he seems quite asexual to me.
Yeah, I think he wanted to watch them. And I think his movies progressively became about watching them in more and more precarious situations. But that's just a theory. So yeah, he doesn't know what he should do next. And we have him in a meeting with Peggy, his assistant. She was his very long time script supervisor and personal assistant. She actually started working with him in the UK under Capricorn. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure that was in the UK. And then by the time Vertigo got made, she became his full-timer. She's played here by Toni Collette, who is always delightful to see. She's listing off some of the things that he has been offered that he's turned down, one of which is The Diary of Anne Frank.
No.
Different movie. Also, Casino Royale with Cary Grant playing James Bond. So interesting stuff he passed on there.
Love Toni Collette. I've loved her since Muriel's Wedding and Velvet Goldmine.
She's so good. She should have won an Oscar for Hereditary.
We see that Alma is super supportive of him, too. Enter the film Danny Huston. First off, he reminds me of Ray Wise a lot in this performance. How real is the wit thing?
We weren't there, but they were close, he and Alma, and he was a contributor to Stage Fright and Strangers on a Train. I wasn't there, but it seems like they were at least very close friends. Did they consummate? I don't know. So he comes across the book Psycho, which is by Robert Bloch. We see him reading and imagining the scenes, how Ed dug up his mom to sleep with her corpse, which, okay. There it is. He's like, oh my gosh, I think this is it. And he has ideas already.
Do you have any idea what inspired Hitchcock to move the story from Wisconsin to Phoenix, Arizona, and California?
I don't, but I'm guessing that it probably had something to do with not wanting to shoot in Wisconsin.
Yeah, no need to do that. When he's been making a case for Psycho and Alma sort of comes around, I love that Alma over breakfast suggests to him, when he says, I'm going to kill off the heroine halfway through, that will really get them. She says, you shouldn't wait until halfway through, kill her off after 30 minutes. And he's sold on Psycho and tells Peggy to buy up every copy so that nobody will know the ending. Toni Collette, in terms of having full power over wearing a thing, boy, does she rock the cat's eyeglasses in this film.
Oh, she totally does. This was the first time that anyone did anything like this in a movie. Both killed off the leading lady halfway through, and also what we'll see later, sort of the marketing and PR stunts around this. This was new. This was a really innovative, risky choice.
The two shots that what does everyone think about from Psycho? The corpse wheeling around in the armchair, the shower scene, and that creepy look on Anthony Perkins's face as Norman Bates.
Hitchcock does this stunt where he invites a bunch of people from the media to his home to hear about what he's doing next. He passes around a bunch of pictures of what Ed Gein did.
To people
and everyone
and
looks,
their body parts.
Yeah, and everyone looks horrified. And Michael is in this scene, and he's got that look on his face, not unlike when the Doors were on stage with Jim Morrison, where he's got that sort of what are you going to do? Look on his face right before he pulls out all those pictures and passes them around. At the end of this, Lew Wasserman says, I've seen happier faces on a school bus going over a cliff.
Which makes me wonder, when was Lew Wasserman on a school bus going over a cliff?
I know, I was like, when did this when did you have the opportunity to see such a thing? But I guess if one uses their imagination, they can picture children on a school bus going over a cliff. It's unpleasant. And so this meeting seems to be.
Cut to a meeting with film executive Barney Balaban, who I think is related to the actor Bob Balaban. As is often the case with film executives in movies about filmmaking, Barney Balaban is wrong about everything, and in the tradition of the top brass, of top studio brass being portrayed in movies as wrong so much that you wonder how they got to where they are. And I love, there's a moment here where Wasserman tells someone in this position has to be flexible in terms of flattering everyone and being quick on their feet, where he points out that Balaban's father ran a grocery store. He has to cover for himself rapidly when Hitchcock says, well, my father ran a grocery store, but I love seeing him being legendary at his job.
Oh yeah, we see a couple of really wonderful scenes of competence from Lew Wasserman. I love seeing someone do their job well.
I love competence. I love people appreciating competence. I love praise for competence. I love competence being portrayed as something to admire and aspire to.
Ultimately, even though they are no, we do not want to make this movie, Wasserman stands behind him and says, how much money do you need to make the movie? And he says $800,000.
Hey, Cleopatra cost $44 million a few years later.
Yes, exactly.
It's not a lot to ask for.
No, it really isn't. Hitchcock mentions how he feels trapped by Alfred Hitchcock Presents, a show that is making him gobs of money. He describes it as like being in a coffin that is being nailed shut, probably similar to the coffin he gave little Melanie Griffith with a doll of her mother inside as a gift. Uh-huh.
What?
Yeah, that's a thing he did.
Why?
Because he liked to prank people.
Ah.
And frighten them. He goes to Alma and he is like, do you like this house? Because we might lose this house because I desperately need to make the movie Psycho. And also, didn't we just hear he's getting like $29,000 a week for Alfred Hitchcock Presents? Like, how can we not pay for shit if we're getting that? Drama queen.
The highest tax bracket is really high in that era.
That's true. We did
He isn't quoting post-tax, he's just mentioning his salary.
Yes, you're correct. He's going to self-finance, which is a really wild, bold choice to make in this time period. Self-financing a movie is a dangerous proposition for anyone.
Yeah, we've seen Francis Ford Coppola parting with his watch collection.
We've also seen it be successful, but it when it fails, it really burns. Coppola's had to sell off a lot of shit for his passion projects over the years.
Yeah, he tells Alma that she might not be able to enjoy the pool for much longer. He talks about their working relationship in the early days, where you imagine it's madcap, it's exciting, they're discovering and building this new world together, and it's an example of good exposition.
Harkening back to that, they were both making movies and doing all of the art together and figuring out how to use the camera inventively. Like, they figured out a lot of cool shit together.
Well, I want a Singing in the Rain about the 1929 blackmail.
That would be fun. Do you want to self-finance it?
I want someone else who knows how to write a script to think that's a good idea, write it, and sell it to someone, and then I want to go see it. I don't want to do any of the work.
I agree. And God bless, Lew makes a deal where Alfred Hitchcock is going to finance the movie and Paramount is only going to distribute it, but for 40% of the profits. They're going to do it. They're going to make the movie.
Amazing. Hitch writes that check, and we cut to the Hitchcocks sleeping in separate twin beds, which was a thing that also happened to normal couples in the 50s because it was popularized on TV when they couldn't show Lucy and Desi sharing a bed.
Yeah.
I feel so bitter at how the code prevented us from telling real stories about how real people live for so many decades. But then he has a meeting with the Karate Kid.
Yes, Ralph Macchio shows up here just for one scene, sadly. He is going to write the movie.
He is playing Joe Stefano, the writer, and he mentions that he sees his shrink every day. Hitchcock is psychotherapy skeptic, but Ralph Macchio gets the job based on the subjects that he mentions discussing with his shrink every day, which are sex, rage, and my mother.
Hitchcock didn't need psychotherapy because he went to the film set and took it out on everyone. Yeah, you don't need a doctor if you have a bunch of people who are going to do that for you.
Who are going to be your little inflatable dolls that you kick around.
Yeah. Just a bunch of things that don't have inner lives. Then we see him meeting with the censors, and here's Kurtwood Smith. I thought this was so interesting because I didn't know the order of when you meet with the motion picture board, and I thought that it would have been after the finished product came out, but they're reviewing the screenplay and they're haggling over like how to handle the offensive stuff in the movie, which is pretty much the whole movie. He's making promises that he has no intention to keep or will be finding workarounds.
Among other things, they are not okay with the sound of a toilet flushing or, of course, with the shower scene.
Yes. I mean, and the toilet flush in this movie isn't even like a toilet flush. It is to get rid of her notepaper, taking down the numbers. It's not like someone has just expelled something from their person toilet flush. It is a throwing out paper toilet flush.
He imagines himself on a shrink's couch, but it's a put on. He hasn't gone to therapy. He's imagining Ed Gein as his shrink. And then...
God help you.
And then we cut to Hitch's office and Alma recommending Anthony Perkins for the role of Norman Bates on the grounds that Anthony Perkins is gay.
You see that they have a relationship not unlike Gwen Verdon and Bob Fosse. It is implied that part of a relationship with him is putting up with all of this weird, frustrating bullshit. Ultimately, she has been recognized as a true partner in his creations. The critic Charles Champlin wrote in 1982, "The Hitchcock touch had 4 hands and 2 were Alma's." When Hitchcock accepted the AFI Lifetime Achievement Award in 1979, he said that he wanted to mention, quote, 4 people who have given me the most affection, appreciation, and encouragement and constant collaboration. The first of the 4 is a film editor. The second is a scriptwriter. The third is the mother of my daughter, Pat. And the fourth is as fine a cook as ever, perform miracles in a domestic kitchen. And their names are Alma Reville. So, yeah, which is lovely. And then, next we do see a meeting with Anthony Perkins, who, as I mentioned, is played by James D'Arcy. And he is perfect. He gets the manner and the look just exactly right.
Perkins mentions that playing Norman might cut a little too close to home. We cut to a scene of Alma and Hitch in the garden, and he is angry gardening, and he is wearing a suit while gardening.
As one does. They've decided they're going to try and cast Janet Leigh, and we see how he handles himself when a pretty lady shows up and how he just starts charming her, and Alma is not having much of it.
Janet Leigh is played by Scarlett Johansson, and Scarlett Johansson had not been Black Widow for very long at this point. Otherwise, I would wonder, how she winds up taking this supporting role.
She makes a lot of really interesting choices in her
true.
career. I can totally see why she would be interested in doing this project.
Mm-hmm.
And also I can't imagine that she had to be on set that long for it.
Right.
But it's an interesting part. So I can understand why she wanted to do it. She does try and mix it up as much as possible and do things that are interesting to her and then things that will make money.
Mm-hmm.
How dare I suggest that she didn't think that the Jurassic Park movies were interesting? But she talks about her acting method, which is writing an entire history of her characters, which is a thing that I've heard of people doing. It's an actory thing.
Wow. She knows which perfumes Marion Crane wears, and Hitchcock has to use Vera Miles, the blonde that got away, one more time, so he casts her as the older sister.
He describes her as thankless, and then we later see him spying on her changing, which, ew.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the deal. Vera Miles was a significant Hitchcock blonde. She was being groomed to take over for Grace Kelly after Grace left him. She starred in The Wrong Man and was going to be the lead in Vertigo, but she had the temerity to get pregnant. She was still under contract to him, but after her pregnancy, she also wanted to step away from the spotlight. And he felt like he had to punish her for that and that she didn't appreciate him for, again, wanting to have a child. That was her choice and that's what she wanted. Might as well torture her about it. And we see him treating her really badly in this.
He spies on Vera through a peephole in the wall where he sees her taking off her bra. And he is living that saying that eavesdroppers seldom hear pleasant said of themselves.
I've talked about this endlessly. I love a movie that shows process. I know what it's like to be so obsessed with a project that you get woken up by it, as we see in this movie. I would be a lot happier to see the artistic process around storyboarding and less spying on and torturing women and fantasizing about speaking with Ed Gein. There's a lot of really interesting process stuff that Hitchcock was into that I would have loved to see a little more of that and a little less of him being a total fucking creepazoid if we're going to talk about how he got this movie made. As we discussed, I think this movie is maybe a little generous to him compassion wise about how shitty he was, but also again, if we're going to show the making of a movie, don't make me watch him fantasize about talking to Ed Gein.
No. So he and Alma have a conversation about needing to tighten their belts. The way that they tighten their belts is he's not allowed to order foie gras and other delicacies from Maxim's of Paris anymore, so he complains about the quality of the foie gras at Chasen's versus Maxim's. And we cut to the first day on the set, and oh my gosh, ScarJo is the spitting image of Janet Leigh as Marion Crane.
Yes, and Jessica Biel is also very similar to Vera Miles. I thought it was weird that they were in costume together because they do not appear in any scenes together in the movie, but it's good for the story. And they all have to vow that they will keep the secrets of Psycho to themselves and will not share anything.
Do we know the shooting order for Psycho? Like, do we know if they might have just happened to shoot Lila's scenes and Marion's scenes separately on the same day where they could have been on the set at the same time?
You'll be shocked to hear that I don't have the call sheets from Psycho.
I'm sure they're available somewhere.
I'm sure they are. There's any number of things that could have been happening here. They could have been doing costume tests. They could have been doing publicity photos. There's any number of reasons why they could be on set together, both in costume.
It's also possible that he wants them all on set together because it is day one of shooting. Everyone's script is missing the last 10 pages and they all have to take a vow together.
There's other directors who don't give you all the pages of a script. Woody Allen, again, famously does not give people a full shooting script. He's very dismissive of Vera Miles, and Vera warns Janet Leigh to not get too involved with Hitchcock, to like keep some good boundaries.
There's an emphasis on Vera's isolation here because I think Hitch very much has things organized for her to feel that she has lost her place in the sun.
She's going to a workplace where she knows everybody hates her, even though I don't think that that's necessarily the case. That's the energy that's out there. It felt very similar to like when you walk into a room and, you know, everybody's been talking about you. Then Alma is out shopping and she buys herself a fancy swimsuit. I just have a note here. Imagine not being desperately attracted to Helen Mirren all the time, but clearly, you know, it's Alfred Hitchcock.
I don't know if like the standards of how a boutique was set up were different in 1960s California, but everything is just hanging out there on the rack with the price tags displayed. It looks like a discounter.
It's not Barney's. It is not a shopping experience store.
It is not. It isn't my idea of where the wife of a top director would shop. But we also meet John Gavin, who was also in Spartacus.
Yeah,
that
so
year.
John Gavin shows up to make out with Janet Leigh and play Sam. He has a fascinating history. Also, he is actually of Mexican descent. He was born Juan Vincent Apablasa. I ruined that. I know that. He was a wildly untrained actor who just like happened into a number of classic movies. He came home from the war and someone was like, you should get a screen test. And then the next thing he knows, he's in a bunch of movies. He was Julius Caesar in Spartacus. He was in Imitation of Life. And this. He would later become the president of the Screen Actors Guild in 1971. And then he became the United States ambassador to Mexico from 1981 to 1986. And then the most crazy thing I read, he was almost James Bond after George Lazenby left after On Her Majesty's Secret Service. And he was almost cast as James Bond in Diamonds Are Forever before they were like, you know what, maybe we can get Connery back. And that was that.
We have a fun scene here of Anthony Perkins not getting why Norman Bates would want to watch a woman undressing. And so they're filming the opening scene of Psycho. And Alma runs into Whit on the back lot. I don't really care about this subplot. And we see Hitch jealously watching Alma and Whit through the slats on the Venetian blinds.
I also don't care about this subplot very much. Alma and Whit have a will they or won't they kind of flirtation where he wants her to write with him and maybe wants her to have an affair with him. And she doesn't, and then she finds out he's having an affair with someone else, and the end.
She, who is not his wife, goes up and sees him in bed with another woman who is not his wife. But that's later in the film.
Yeah, we just covered it. We're not talking about it anymore. A little looky at how creepy Hitchcock is about the way he spies on people. And then we see him shooting the really famous sequence where Janet Leigh is driving the car and he's narrating it. And it's pretty gross, the things he's saying. He's trying to put her into a place of distress, and it works.
One of the great things about that scene in Psycho is that the things that Marion is hearing in her head aren't actually happening. They're what's in her head. They're not reflective of reality. Because what we find out later on is they don't go to the police. They hire Detective Arbogast and they just want the money back. If Marion had not happened to crash at the Bates Motel, it's possible, but who knows? She is a fictional character.
Once again, we are seeing that if a man creates something artistically worth our time, it's totally cool if he treats people like shit because we'll all tolerate it. We have a moment where we find out like what went down with him and Vera, and they are very straightforward about it the way I just said it, pretty much. Like they don't sugarcoat that or give it a different position. Which I appreciate it. And we just see him like engaging with Janet Leigh, like he gets a ride home with her. We find out a little bit more about him. They have a fun moment where she introduces him to candy corn, and Alma used to be Hitchcock's boss at that first film studio.
He had to work his way up to assistant director before he could dare to ask her out. And I guess Janet also wants Hitch's version of the story on what happened with Vera. At one point she mentions that Orson Welles was harder to work with, and this brings me back to one of my favorite moments in film, which we talked about back in our Ed Wood episode with Liam McEnany. And this didn't really happen, but Ed Wood, while dressed in an Angora sweater, runs into Orson Welles in a restaurant where Orson Welles is his idol, where Orson Welles is complaining about having to cast Charlton Heston as a Mexican.
We see Hitch is kind of out of control. He confronts Alma about her relationship with Whit, and then he angrily cleans the pool. Which, is this the first time we've seen someone angrily clean a pool on this show?
I think so. Also, he is angry cleaning the pool while wearing a suit. I'm going to assume he did not own anything amounting to what they would at the time have called dungarees.
He doesn't seem like a jeans guy. And also, not unlike Otto Preminger, always wearing a suit.
I guess the dry cleaning bill was also something the Hitchcocks did not cut back on. And then we have the filming of the shower scene from Psycho, where they show the steaming rubber tubes of the on-set shower and they follow them down into the shower for the shower scene. And you see like the on-set double for Norman Bates as Mrs. Bates stabbing.
And then Hitchcock's like, you're not doing it mean enough. And then he does it. That is the lore, that he himself did it. And we see him just, channel all of his rage into terrifying Janet Leigh. And it's pretty upsetting, this sequence.
Hitch imagines that he is stabbing Kurtwood Smith. He later collapses, and then we cut to Alma and Whit at the beach, and I'm wondering what kind of writer is able to rent a California beach cottage to have somewhere to write and carry on trysts.
It was the late 50s, early 60s. Everybody made more money and everything cost less. So okay. Hitch collapses and he's all sick, and Alma gets called to set, and she goes in and she figures out right away how to set up the shot for Martin Balsam as Arbogast.
Arbogast. Is that even a real name? Where do they come up with this name?
I believe it is a real name. I don't know where it comes from. It's kind of great to watch her just come in and be like, do this, do this, do this. Okay, go. And get the shot. Eventually, this all leads up to Hitch is kind of laying around feeling sorry for himself. And then Alma just reads him for filth.
I enjoy Hitch panicking over being 2 and then 3 whole days behind schedule, when we have spoken about directors who have been wildly over budget and behind schedule by weeks and millions when $1 million was a bunch of money. Barney tries to put a hack director who works with Jerry Lewis on set to catch up, and Hitch finds all of the sand traces in the bathroom and collects them into a tiny bottle. I didn't get this at first. I thought, are these like anti-cold pills where he's grinding them up and snorting them in order to get over his cold faster? Or what's going on here? Or is this a separate bottle of sand that she brought back from the beach that I didn't spot her collecting? I finally figured this out on my second viewing. He asks if Alma and Whit are having an affair. And as you said, she reads him for filth. And this is a good reminder of everything he owed her, which she lays down on him. And boy, did he owe her.
Basically, like, Alma's like, get your ass back to work. We have a moment where he talks to Vera about how she left him. And she's basically just saying to him, like, this life that you were offering me isn't ultimately what I want. And that's okay. Except it's not okay with him.
Well, yeah, she already had 2 kids. I don't see why she needed a third. And I don't understand why you wouldn't want to be a huge movie star.
I'm with you, but, different strokes. Yeah, no, I get it.
Vera says that she can pick up her own dry cleaning. In this scene that Vera has with Janet early, and then also, again, here, it feels like the Hitchcock women say these things about him and his that are a little too on the nose and sound like they read a film theory book about him, where she says to him that his blonde woman of mystery doesn't exist. It's a little too on the nose for me.
I agree that sometimes it's like, we get it, yes.
It comes up over and over again, people saying directly to him that his blonde doesn't exist. Then there's that scene of Alma catching Whit having an actual affair. We get the sense that he's been using her all along. We have another conversation with Ed, which is one of the few too many. I also reflected that, like, Michael Wincott was one of the only things we liked about The Doors back in episode 1. Nobody really knows how to use Michael Wincott. Jordan Peele made the best recent use of Wincott's special brand of intensity that I've seen.
I agree, and I also feel like that's a lost award nominee role for Michael Wincott. Like, that was a great performance.
Yeah.
They do a screening of the movie, and Wasserman tells him it's not great. People are not into it, but he's talking about how, like, they can repackage it and still make money off of it. He goes home and he's like, meh. And Alma's like, we're getting this done. We're a team. Let's go cook.
It's great. And I want more Stuhlbarg in this movie. I want this to be a movie about all of the balls that Wasserman has in the air in 1960. Did he have other clients in that Oscars that I love to go on and on about?
I am quite certain he did. I know he mentions Jimmy Stewart in here.
Hitch tells Alma that he can't pull it off without her, and I love the touch of them being adorable with their little white dogs here. We have a moment of questionable pet ownership, which we see that Hitch has a crystal carved glass of what I think is brandy, and he pours some of it out for the dogs while they're eating.
I mean,
We're
get
all
your dogs
mammals.
drunk. Yeah, get your dogs drunk. It's the 60s.
Yeah.
Why not? And they're editing, and Peggy is blocking the door while they're doing it.
Which is great. Yeah, they had a moment that I loved of them power snacking on caviar together in the middle of the night and remembering that they are a power couple. Wasserman cannot charm his way past Peggy.
He goes and he meets with the MPAA again, and he describes the score as lyrical to Kurtwood Smith, which I loved, because, oh boy, is it not.
I love how he calls Kurtwood Smith out here, because Sherlock is an uncreative, self-important, empty man on a power trip who just enjoys objecting to things and making life hard for actual creative people. He says, okay, if you let us have this scene, you can personally come and, like, give instruction on how to direct the opening love scene. And he has called his bluff, because Kurtwood Smith is telling people how to do a job that he has no idea how to do. They finish the film, but Paramount wants to bury this thing and says that they are only going to open the film in 2 theaters with no fancy premiere.
Which is bullshit. Hitchcock creates one of the earliest real true buzz campaigns for a horror movie. This would be not really be replicated in the same way until the Blair Witch Project.
Ooh, interesting choice there.
What he was able to accomplish here in terms of building out this, you need to guard the film, you need to make sure that people don't come in after it starts, you need to shut the curtain as soon as the movie is over, so the impact of it is really felt and people go home with their fears. There's a whole set of rules he has, and also of like the lobby cards where he's just like, this is a super shocking movie, you're gonna freak out. It's brilliantly done.
It involves Pinkerton men, and we see he doesn't come into the movie, but we see him outside in the lobby doing this kind of impassioned tango/orchestra conductor series of movements to, like, conducting the audience's audible reactions to Psycho like they're in orchestra. I don't know if this is a thing Hitchcock actually did.
Even like the worst people on earth, I love seeing them excited about delighting an audience. I love when someone loves what they're doing, and this is Hitchcock loving the result of his work and doing exactly what he wanted to do with this movie, which is to fuck people up. And also, he signs the letter in a way that I will be signing everything going forward. The letter that he writes to all of the theater owners and distributors, which is sincerely and emphatically Alfred Hitchcock. At this point, too, as everyone's exiting the theater, I loved this, where he and Alma are just grinning, and everyone around them looks like they are going to die of horror. They've done what they wanted to do, and he does take this moment to share the spotlight with her and to acknowledge her as they're leaving the movies, and I thought that was great.
Hooray, they get to keep the house with the swimming pool.
We see him closing off the movie with breaking the fourth wall again and saying, I don't know what my next project will be, and then a crow lands on his shoulder. And it's like, oh, it's going to be the birds.
How did you feel about the use of the broken fourth wall device in this film?
I'm glad they didn't do it a lot.
I wasn't crazy about this narrative device. I wasn't crazy about the Ed Gein narrative device. And the problem is that when you take out the narrative devices, what you wind up with is a linear and then this happened film. It feels like those are just there to resist that. And I know that sounds like I'm just objecting to everything there is, but that's what I gotta say.
The fourth wall breaking is more in the spirit of Hitchcock as an artist than I do the Ed Gein stuff. The other thing is with him too, is that while this movie was inspired by that book and by that person, they created something entirely different. Not unlike what he would do with The Birds, too. It shares a concept and a title with the Du Maurier story. There's just also birds in that movie. And it's kind of the same thing with Psycho, where there's a psycho in this movie. It is very much its own thing. And so him being so reliant on Ed to tell this story didn't ring truthfully to me.
Ed is so gross, and Hitchcock's style is so elegant.
Part of the reason we moved it out of Wisconsin, if I can speculate wildly again, is also that that's a grimy-ass story. Hitchcock doesn't do grimy.
All right, so do we have any awards talk on this film?
Outside of that review from the Huffington Post, this got a few awards. This was nominated for an Oscar in 2013 for makeup and hairstyling.
Fair.
Yes. It was nominated for a few Saturn Awards. Those are the Sci-Fi, Fantasy, and Horror Film Awards. Helen Mirren was nominated for a BAFTA for leading actress in 2013, and it was also nominated in the BAFTAs for hair and makeup. The Casting Society nominated it for a Outstanding Achievement in Casting Award in 2013. Helen Mirren was nominated for a Golden Globe. Shockingly, they called this a drama. The category fraud at the Golden Globes is bananas. And also she was nominated for a couple other things, including a SAG Award, a London Critics Film Circle Award, and Yeah, Phoenix Film Critics Society Award for Anthony Hopkins nomination. She was on a lot of best of lists around the country for her performance. It was really Helen Mirren's show. Also, this movie was nominated for several AARP Movies for Grown-Up Awards, including for Helen Mirren, Anthony Hopkins, Best Picture, and then also Best Grown-Up Love Story.
I'd call that more of a friendship story. Honestly, if you want to see a good grown-up love story, watch the Meryl Streep portions of Julie and Julia.
If accepting that you're stuck together creatively and you're not going to get fulfillment from your relationship in any other way is grown up, then sure, we nailed it.
This seems like a pretty much asexual marriage that was also a creative partnership. But I don't know. We don't know what goes on in people's homes. A lot of this is conversations we have no idea if the Hitchcocks actually had. Nor should we. It's their damn business.
Any favorite quotes?
Yes, all of them, said by or pertaining to Alma. You shouldn't have to wait until halfway through. Kill her off after 30 minutes. Are we going to have to sell the whole house or just the pool? And, more importantly, what does Alma think? Sara, can you please give our listeners a quick refresher about how we score movies?
So, we rate movies on a 1 to 10 scale across 10 areas that we find to be subjectively and or objectively important to most films, but specially tailored to specific issues particular to biopics. If you want more details on how we score movies, please scroll down our webpage at biopicapodcaststory.podbean.com. You'll also find there a record of our scores for past episodes. And with that out of the way, let's score this thing. So
let's do it.
Outward appearances, makeup and hair, gave it a 9. Acting and casting, gave it an 8. Passage of time, 4. Costuming, 9. Quality of the script, 5. Accuracy, 7. Storytelling, was it cliched, interesting, inventive? 5. It swung for the fences, but it missed in some cases with that. Production value, 7. Production direction decision making, 7. And do we care, 5? Which brings my total to 6.5.
For outward appearances, makeup and hair, I gave it an 8.5. For acting and casting, 8.5. For passage of time, 6. Costuming, 8. Quality of the script, 6. Accuracy, 6. Storytelling, 4. Production value, 7. Production direction decision making, 5. And do we care, I gave it a 3 because I'm just not that into Hitchcock.
I agree with you on that. This particular portrayal of behind the scenes was not as interesting to me, like, because of the Ed Gein of it all. I don't care about wit. Find me another subplot. I don't care where you get it from.
It's okay to make a 90-minute movie. Hitchcock would have agreed with me.
I don't know if there was enough there to justify this movie existing. I loved seeing everyone in it, but what is the point? The other failing is like, you're trying to make a movie that's interesting about one of the most interesting movies ever made. And I know people think Vertigo is his best. I know it's like super basic bitch of me, but I do feel like this is his best movie. Given the opportunity to watch Psycho or watch this, Stolberg notwithstanding, I want to watch Psycho.
I am glad that I finally rewatched Psycho.
I don't want to watch a movie about how they made the birds. I don't want to watch stuff about how they made cool stuff. I want to watch the cool stuff.
Yeah.
The performances are great. Everything looks amazing. I don't care as much about the making of this movie as I do about the movie. That said, give me a Lew Wasserman biopic. I will watch that.
So long as they put Stuhlbarg in it again, right?
That would be my preference, but it's not even a requirement. I want to know more about him.
You want it to focus in on one period of his life where he's relatively easy on the eyes, or do you want the Attenborough treatment?
I don't want the Attenborough treatment ever.
Okay. So
give me like a post-war Lew Wasserman miniseries where we see him like with each of his clients. Like, it's Hitchcock, it's Ronald Reagan, it's Bette Davis,
But
Jimmy Stewart, like all of those were his clients.
not a Ryan Murphy production.
No, because then somehow there's going to be a serial killer.
The average score is 6.35. Hitchcock, you are a perfectly acceptable use of an evening, but given that lives are short and evenings for sitting comfortably in front of a TV are limited, perhaps you, the listener, might want to watch an actual Hitchcock movie instead.
I would agree. Like any of Hitchcock's movies, watch those.
Agreed.
Definitely see Psycho. Definitely watch The Birds. Also, another one that I'm very fond of that's, like not as well known is The Trouble with Harry, which features Shirley MacLaine in possibly her first film role, but definitely one of her earliest film roles. It's from 1955.
Is she his only redhead?
Karen Black might have been a redhead in Family Plot. I can't account for hair color in a lot of the black and white movies because I just don't know. All the Grace Kelly ones are amazing too. Like his body of work is extraordinary at any point in it.
Also, Velvet Goldmine is a vastly underappreciated film with a great early performance from Toni Collette. Also, Eddie Izzard and Jonathan Rhys-Meyers at his youthful prettiest. Nope has an amazing Michael Wincott performance in it, where he sings One-Eyed, One-Horned, Flying Purple People Eater. Oh my gosh, and we forgot, this is Sarah's birthday episode, and we should have mentioned it at the top. Happy birthday, Sarah. So
Thank
Sarah's
you.
birthday was just this past weekend if you're listening on the release date. And so every year for the Sarah's birthday episode, we do a movie that in some capacity stars one of her boyfriends, and Sarah's boyfriends are Michael Stuhlbarg, Steve Buscemi, and Bryan Cranston.
Yes, I am fully in the tank for all things character actor. Also, I mentioned last week I've been rewatching the TV series Fargo, and speaking of Mr. Stuhlbarg, I'm in the middle of season 3 right now, which he is in and is absolutely wonderful in. That's also the one where Ewan McGregor plays two brothers. Its show is really great. And then
Cool.
Still reading The Power Broker. Until further notice, I am reading The Power Broker. Just, a couple of housekeeping items before we go. Podcast baby, toddler. And we have launched a Patreon, simply an effort to defray some of the costs associated with bringing this fine product to you, which includes platform hosting, recording, equipment, and research. We occasionally have to order a book off the internet, and we sometimes also have to pay for movie rentals. And sometimes we want to see a movie in the theater, or we may go to one of each other's houses so we can record in person at the same place and the same time. And so when we sing, it doesn't sound as whack as it did on the 2026 preview episode, which
could not sing the refrain to the 18 producers for Jimmy version of We Didn't Start the Fire at the same time.
If you like content like that, please go listen to that episode if you haven't already. We are, for the time being, offering shout-outs and access to our Awful First 3 episode and more to come there. With that, we'd love to thank Brandon and Gates, who are already signed up.
Thank you, Brandon and Gates.
Thank you. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star rating and subscribe to us on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and tell a friend, or better yet, plural friends, and share us on social media. We hear it helps. You can follow us on Threads, Blue Sky, and Instagram, where we have visual aids from our episodes. Our Instagram handle is at Biopic a Podcast Story, so do check us out there, and we'll link to that in the show notes as well. Please also check out our webpage at biopicapodcaststory.podbean.com to see the official episode ratings for all of the movies that we've done so far. If you would like to get in touch, you can email us at biopiclistenermailbag@gmail.com. Our theme music is by Ben Patch. The intro is his song Slater Cannonball, and the outro is Spring Breakers, and you can check him out on Spotify. And as a reminder, as we mentioned up top, we will be speaking at Intelligent Speech Online, which is taking place on February 28, 2026. just in time for Rena's birthday, and tickets are available now at intelligentspeechonline.com.
Enter biopic, that's BIOPIC, at the checkout for 10% off. Tune in next week when, in honor of the 2026 Winter Olympics, we'll be talking about I, Tonya, a movie that has been requested for a while and that we're excited to get to.
My God, I love this movie so much, and this movie is all the proof you need. If you are not in the Paul Walter Hauser business, get on that shit.
Good night to the earnest and the cynical.
Signing off sincerely and emphatically. Good night.
Good night, Sarah.